literally everywhere around us all the time, taking in as much data as possible, even if for those watching the World Cup, even the soccer balls are having chips and sensors that then are looked at by AI, and AI is even helping them determine that little sliver of a hand that has gone beyond the the boundary of what's offside. It's just nuts.
Hello, everyone. Hello, this is Irene with SaugaTalks. I speak with fascinating people in tech. So please follow SaugaTalks on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube. We want your comments. We want your opinions. Those fascinating people who I speak, they share their views, their opinions on a wide range of topics, from AI and automation to FinOps and cloud cost management, which comes kind of hand in hand with what we're gonna discuss today, because I'm extremely privileged. Today, my guest is Cortnie Abercrombie. Cortnie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing exceptionally well, because this is such a pleasure, to get to know and kind of reconnect with incredible influencers and tech and business leaders out there. Because you and I, we found out we worked at IBM at some point, and now we're into something else. All right. So I'm absolutely impressed with your background and with your energy and effort dedicated to finding AI truth. So we're gonna talk some of the aspects about it, because your latest book, the title of the book, What You Don't Know. Here we go. That's what it is. What it is. I familiarized myself. All right. And we don't know a lot. Okay. That's why we need to talk to knowledgeable people like yourself, Cortnie. This is like long introduction. Let's dive into this. What don't we know?
Everything. No, I'm just kidding. And the older you get, the more you realize you don't know anything. At least
True.
I do anyway.
True.
No. There's so much, though. There's just so much that AI is involved in these days. And so, I devote a whole chapter just to letting people know, it's everywhere. It's in your watches. It's in your computer, definitely. It's in your vacuum cleaner. Some people, it's in their refrigerators even. So, I mean, short of putting a little chip in your dog, which most of us have of that as well, there's still nothing that can make them stop barking when we get on a Zoom call, right? But I mean, seriously, it is literally everywhere around us all the time, taking in as much data as possible, even if for those watching the World Cup, even the soccer balls are having chips and sensors that then are looked at by AI, and AI is even helping them determine that little sliver of a hand that has gone beyond the the boundary of what's offside. It's just nuts. And sometimes at least there's transparency in the World Cup about that, because we immediately see, that the ref goes off the field and he looks at it, and you can see him looking at it because they're showing it on camera. But what we don't know is all the secret places that it's making judgments about us, in the same way that those soccer players, are going to be determined offside or onside or whatever. We're being determined, but we don't know what's doing it. We don't get the VAR and the replay and all of that good stuff. And that's why I wrote the book, is so I can show people some of the places, like hiring, like our kids and teens, being on social media all day. Why does that happen? Because we're using a lot of AI recommendation engines, and and the politics. So every major aspect of our lives, I've tried to go through and outline how AI is involved there, and what we can do about it when we feel adversely impacted by that. In a lot of cases, it's really convenient for us, so we're not going to stop using it. Nobody's going to stop using all of social media. Well, I mean, there are people who have tried, but I mean, that's just how we communicate as a world now. We can't even get in touch with the other side of the world unless we're using it. I mean, I can't think of an international person who doesn't use WhatsApp or something like that to try and, get around the expensive cost of, telecommunications these days.
So let's try to understand a little bit of this, because I know you're an active member of AI community. You are a successful keynote speaker, so people trust your opinions. Let's start with the data, okay? Because data is mounting around us. You mentioned fabulous applications we also love for their convenience. At the same time, companies, organizations, societies, and countries, as well as at the individual level, right? So how do we think about data these days, you think? Because that's changing, right? That perspective also changing.
I mean, what's really ironic is people tend to think of AI, they think about artificial intelligence, but they forget to think, where does the training for the artificial intelligence come from? They forget that there's a whole body of data that is there to train, what's the right decisioning for this AI and what's the wrong decisioning for this AI. And even if we back up behind the data, even what's behind the data creation, it's us. We're the ones who create all of this data, whether that's a predictive policing app. Where did they get that information? It's probably associated with bookings. We fail to think about, where does the data actually come from that informs these decision-making things that then become, as you are well aware, Irene, also automated. And that's where we really get ourselves into trouble, because we've like, okay, if we go back, it's the human, they generate the data then becomes part of the model and the algorithm, the set of instructions that then become part of a computer program. And the computer program then becomes automated. That's what the goal is. If you do AI right, you shouldn't have to touch it again, right? No. What we've done is, now we've eliminated the human by a factor of 1, 2, 3, 4 at least, because we generated it, but then somehow at the end of this, we're just subject to it again. And so it's kind of like, we are eliminating the humans from the loop in so many ways, in so many aspects of our lives, to the point where I wonder if one day we'll remember how we used to think about decisions. Like, think about how you used to make decisions when you were younger. Oh, let's take a car. Like, when I was younger, it was all about the sound system and the coolness factor. Like, am I gonna look super cool? What color is this guy? No, like, but you have to kind of think about that. Like, oh, my decision. But now what is my decisioning? Let me think about that. Okay, well, I get on the cars.com and it gives me whatever it thinks that I want. And then I just look at those things and I go, yeah, I do kind of like those things. And it's basing it on other people that are similar to me. But at what point do I now not know what is it that actually intrigued me about that car? And that's a simplistic, something you can relate to. Where we get ourselves into trouble is the deep thinking that we do, and letting these applications and things that make our lives convenient kind of take over some of those abilities of us to make those decisions actively, as opposed to just going, yeah, I kind of like that. That's kind of interesting. Instead of actively, that's passive decision making because it's being presented to us, right? But we need to keep our brains engaged and keep ourselves making these decisions. I gotta worry about that for the future.
So let's unpeel some of these layers, maybe, okay? Because behind all these recommendations, there are teams, there are people, okay? Those who manage that algorithm for us, right? For our convenience. So data scientists, okay?
Yeah.
They play huge role now in every large organization, medium size. Let's talk a little bit about that culture, because that's still new. That's very much new, you think? Mm-hmm.
It is, and the culture is so new. And what brings me to have these conversations, do you know that we're doing a lot of research at AI Truth about corporate AI ethics best practices. And one of the first things you have to do when you're trying to understand, well, what are your practices, is what are your practices? And part of the problem is that a lot of them can't identify a regular routine set of processes that they go through as a group in this, what I call a pod structure, which I keep behind me, which is what that whole big thing is. This is the pod and how it works. But the team members in it individually, they can identify themselves and their own roles. What they don't understand a lot of times is how they go back and forth, some of their interactions amongst the entire group, and how those contribute to the wholeness of a solution that's coming out. They're often involved in these little iterations. And part of that is because some of the team is coming from a business background and they have picked up skills where they've gone to like Coursera, or they've gone to data camp or someplace like that, and they've picked up some rudimentary coding skills. But they don't necessarily understand the data behind it, and they don't necessarily understand the larger picture, the larger vision that maybe the person who's funding the solution has. They're being told piecemeal. And we all know how telephone works. Remember the old game of telephone, or some people used to call it Chinese whispers, I think. But it's like where you tell someone something and then you see how far down the line it goes before it changes. That happens in our data science community too. And especially when different parts know parts of it, of the entire solution, but they don't know the whole thing. They don't know what they're contributing to, because they kind of contribute in a assembly line, so to say. So it's been fascinating because you have people from a computer science background that come with their set of norms and their set, and this is where the anthropology in me comes out, because I want to see people interacting and watching them talk past each other, even on their own teams, because they're coming from these very different universes where very different norms and very different values are at play. For data engineers, they're all about the data, and they want to make sure that the data is quality. They want to make sure. Data scientists are like, I just need enough. I just need enough of that data to be right. I just need to feed it with just this much. I don't need like perfect, data. I'll clean it up myself. And the data engineer is like, no, you won't do that. That's wrong. And we have data policies. And then the data scientists are like, that went in one ear and out the other. I don't really care about your data policies. So you've got, I'm just trying to give you like a very colorful example of so many different types of personalities and backgrounds. And then you have computer scientists who are just like, look, I can code anything. Just give me something to work with here and I will code it, or I will go find on GitHub some bits of code that I can use and plug it in. Or I'll find on any open source, I'll go to Kaggle and find a data source that looks good. And this gets us into trouble. These haphazard practices, these loose, undocumented ways of doing things, this is creating Frankenstein AI solutions that nobody can seem to replicate. How did we bring this thing to life? And then to make matters worse in the responsible AI area, those people who create these things often have short tenures with companies. Like the lead data scientists who would know the most about this solution, because they're not one of the ones in the dark developing, in little silos. They're the ones in the middle who are controlling all of the different aspects and working directly with the executive sponsor who may be spending $1 million on this solution or more. And they're leaving within 12 to 18 months. So they have short tenures. They want to go to the next big project. They have no incentive right now to really document what they're doing and really solidify their practices. So the culture is just a hot mess right now. We need help solidifying all the backgrounds, all the norms. And so AI Truth was, we did this corporate AI ethics best practices research to try to understand how can we start to put these tenets of trust, wrap it around the workflow of these people. So the first thing is just showing them back. This is how you've been working, by the way. I think a lot of them don't, they feel it. Like, when you feel like something's just not right, they feel that feeling of contention, but they don't necessarily understand why they feel it, or they don't take time to think about why they're feeling that way and why they're feeling frustrated. And we have a lot of data scientists who are just burned out on this stuff because the behaviors are just off the charts and we're just rushing into things as fast as we can.
right? I read a lot about ethical AI, responsible AI. People gather together to figure out what is it we're gonna do at every level. So
Yeah,
let's maybe cover some of the simplistic again examples here, because engineers and data scientists, they want to experiment.
they
Okay,
do.
they want to deliver innovation.
As they
We
should. And
eh,
they
they
should.
should, and they should. So where is this accountability kind of for the results of your work? Right? So at which level you think this thinking should be taken? Let's say at the companies right now, at the those companies who provide the services to us.
Well, and I think a lot of the good old consulting firms, right, that cater to the Fortune 500 and such, they are thinking through these things. They have developed responsible AI, platforms, and they speak about those, and that's a good way for companies that are larger to learn. Bring these consultants in and have them actually explain. Like, I know Deloitte has Bina Amam, she's great, she's fantastic. We have PwC has really great ones as well. I think we are Anand Rao and some of them. So I mean, we have some really good solid groups out there that can create, IBM as well for sure. um, but I think where we're missing the boat is in the smaller, medium sized and below that, and we're also missing that that catalyst inside of companies to want to do the right things. Right now, there's no really big regulations right now at this moment forcing companies to do and think through the ethical implications. But I think what we're about to witness is we're in this era of just distrust as a whole, as a society as a whole. We don't trust the media, we don't trust the government, we don't trust even scientists anymore, it turns out. I mean, there's like all kinds of people we don't trust that we used to trust, that used to be like our institutions that we used to turn to as our trusted sources. And we just don't have those as a society right now. We don't agree on what those are. And so it makes the entire environment for technology and technology development also go by the wayside, especially when we're constantly seeing things like what happened with FTX, with the crypto, situation, and such greedy CEOs, sometimes just kind of coming out of the woodworks to do, all kinds of insane things. And so that creates just this entire environment of distrust in the marketplace. And I think if we're ever going to earn back trust, we have to start doing some of these that we keep on the website, AI Truth's website, that are the 12 tenets of trust, which is like making it transparent what it is that these algorithms do. Think like the FICO score. Those guys, you can go look up your FICO score and see exactly what it is. But can you go look at, how you've been ranked by some random company, in terms of, whether or not you should have your healthcare claim, settled or given to you, and yet that determines whether or not you're going to get a, procedure you need. No, there's no transparency. There's no real appealing either. So there's no place to go and appeal that. You don't even know how the privacy and security is working on some of these applications that we deal with in our lives every day. Like, I don't know about you, but I have my health insurance company has an app, and you go into that and you submit your claim, and you can see how you're following and tracking along with it, and is it going through, am I going to get this paid for or not, and then you sweat it out if it's a really big one. And it's kind of unnerving to not have any say, no sense of agency, no understanding if they're even using the right background data on you. Especially people who have names that are more common, to understand if your identity might have gotten mixed up with someone else. Like, if your name really was John Doe, for example, you'd be in trouble, right? Or John Smith or whatever. There's these names that are just so common, and in some cultures more than others. So it's like, wow, they could really mess up your identity and you would never even know. You'd just be denied for things based on someone else's potential issues. So those are the kinds of things that I think
Yep, yep. We all feel that. We all feel at at consumer level, patient level, you name it, right? And yet, as member of technology community, which I am so privileged to belong to, for last how many years, right? So,
Mhm.
what do you think? What kind of message should we send to young, inspired data scientists, computer scientists, people who just entering the technology field today? Right, because they will be the next generation building all this stuff for society, right, for the globe. So
That's
what's a
right.
kind of good message for them to situate themselves, because they're also frustrated, they also have challenges, starting career, being excited about experimenting. So what do you think they should be thinking about to really to become the best they can be? Mhm.
Well, I think what they need to focus on is, well, one, do innovate. I want to innovate. I mean, I just feel like the ambitious things that I really want to do with AI, we can't do them yet because nobody would trust them. And they shouldn't, because what I want to do is see AI really get into the healthcare space and start diagnosing appropriately people with a personalized touch in the same way that we would recommend, personalized, things to purchase online, which don't carry a huge risk factor. If you buy the wrong sweater, nothing's going to happen to you. But if you get diagnosed wrong and you don't take the right medicines, bad things will happen to you, right? Or you get diagnosed wrong and someone sells that information about you, then you may never be able to land a job again because the company may not want to take that kind of a risk or an expense into their company, which would be wrong because there's rules against that. But it happens. And so, I think the main thing is the golden rule. When you get into AI and you want to do something innovative, just always think about the flip side too. So if I could recognize criminals with a facial recognition program or whatever, wouldn't that be fantastic? But what happens if I start recognizing and my facial recognition starts convicting people who are innocent? Is the harm going to outweigh the good done by the app? That's the question at the end of the day, or whatever it is that you're developing. Maybe it's not an application, but it's a data feed. And is there a way for you to allow as much transparency as humanly possible so that people have a sense of agency and they're on this journey with you, so that when you're developing, you're not just in a bubble by yourself as an individual developing for this group over here who has no idea that they're even being impacted by what your decisioning system is putting out there, because you're selling it to someone who's impacting them, but with your decisioning capabilities. And that's the part that's really crappy, right? Is when you don't know this is happening and you're disenfranchising people. So you have to think, if this got used the opposite way of what I intended, because this happens, users will take stuff that you develop and they will use it for other means than what it was developed for. It's just a given. So if that happens, could I deal with that situation? Would I be prepared to shut it down? Would I be prepared to take proper legal steps if I had to? Would I be prepared mentally to deal with pushing back on senior executives who tell me that I have to keep going with an innovation even once I see that it's heading in the wrong direction, kind of like the intro to my book, right? Where I'm talking about, whoa, we just went from talking about heavy smokers and now we're talking about,
Please give us this example, Courtney. This was fabulous example from your book, because you found yourself in an interesting situation at the client meeting. Give us some of it, please, of that story.
yeah, because we're just people. All of us are just people. And I put this in the beginning of the book because I am not judging anybody for the situation that they find themselves in. We all will find ourselves in these crazy situations where we suddenly are forced to come to a reckoning with our own personal values. What we have to remember is that we have personal values, and sometimes those conflict with the other people that we're developing a solution for. And we have to figure out where our own personal line is and what we are not willing to cross, so that we know when we have to push back, when we just absolutely will not be able to face ourselves if we don't push back. You don't want to have that kind of career where you look back and go, man, did I just create the atomic bomb version of the AI solution? I put this in the beginning of the book because I am not judging anybody for the situation that they find themselves in. We all will find ourselves in these crazy situations where we suddenly are forced to come to a reckoning with our own personal values. What we have to remember is that we have personal values, and sometimes those conflict with the other people that we're developing a solution for. And we have to figure out where our own personal line is and what we are not willing to cross, so that we, we know when we have to push back, when we just absolutely will not be able to face ourselves if we don't push back. You don't want to have that kind of career where you look back and go, man, did I just create the atomic bomb version of the AI solution here? Or what did I just do? You don't want that. So you have to really come into these situations knowing where your lines are. But that situation, yeah, I was going in and I had this fantastic boss who was a huge champion of women. He really boosted my career and really went to bat for me. And he valued loyalty amongst everything else. And we're sitting in this meeting, and it's becoming more and more clear to me that the digital executive that we're there with is, he's going to start trying to push the limit. That's what users do. I mean, that's what clients do. They want to push the limit of what they can use this thing that they're getting developed for. And it just starts, the conversation starts to go in a whole different direction for a target audience from where it started. And once I started realizing this is not the direction that I need to go, I had to make some quick decisions because that train had already left the building. And you're looking around at the talent in the room, and the deception was, we're going to solve cancer in the world. We're going to reduce cancer. And you're thinking, how's a cigarette company going to reduce cancer in the world? And then you're looking at the rest of this team, and they really believe that they're contributing to this, and they've lost, family members to cancer. And you're thinking, how am I going to navigate this? How do I have this tough conversation about how I'm not going to participate in this? Because I see that my own, people that I know and love from the team are very mentally involved in this already. And then, and not just mentally involved, they're already developing, they've already started this. And then how do you look at the other side and you're like, oh my gosh, this person, they've come a long way in their career even. So how do I do this in a way that I feel comfortable with, and I still can, take my next step in my career too? Because I'll be honest, a lot of people who do decide to push back, we have a lot of people who end up as whistleblowers because there's not time and space given in the process for them to push back and have these conversations about, is this the right thing to do? Luckily, we actually were forced into that conversation. As you know from the book's intro, we had an executive that pulled us aside and said, are you really going to contribute to this? And it was kind of like this wake up moment. It was like, oh my gosh, because you're just running from one project to the next, and you just don't always think it through. And so I think a lot of young people will find themselves in those situations. And so you really have to come to grips with, where are you, on your own spectrum of what will you do and what will you not do?
With automation, with AI, we're talking about more and more about responsible AI, and yet responsible humans. Okay, they are key part. They are key part of building that technology. What's your thought on that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we don't give time and space to the humans that should be in the loop and that should be that are actively developing these solutions, that may see the dirty little underbelly of this solution, and they're just not given any time and space. I mean, I always use this diagram, but they're the ones who are in this junior data scientist role typically. and they're not being given this opportunity between the data engineers and the data scientists that they work with, and definitely not visibility to the lead data scientists in many occasions, to actually say and push back and say, I don't know about this. This seems like we're not using the right data. I feel like we're using proxies for data that doesn't exist, and these proxies aren't working out because they don't truly represent what I think we should be representing, or we're using some sort of, you know, haphazard synthetic data that's been sold to us, or whatever the case may be. But there's got to be an opportunity for those who are very involved, and not just stakeholders who may or may not understand. Stakeholders being people who are paying for the solution, usually on the business side, but don't necessarily understand how this thing is getting created or what data is even being used to create the solution. I think, you know, those are the people who are given the chance to push back. And it's like, those aren't the people who know, though. They're not the ones who really know. And we run these stakeholder meetings as part of Agile, right? Development, because that's what we do. And they're given a chance to talk. The team members themselves usually don't get that chance. And especially not if it's going to slow things down. They'll just gloss right over it, check a mark next to it, and go, okay, well, anyway, moving on. I've seen it done. I've also seen blacklisting of data scientists for pushing back. And in other words, what I mean is they just won't get the next big project that's coming down the loop from that lead data scientist, or they won't get invited to go where the lead data scientist is going next, which happens too. Things need to change. We've got to get some better norms, some better culture going around how we develop data. And it's not only about education, although I think we definitely do need to educate the people who fund the projects better, so that they know what to look out for, how to ask questions, and that kind of thing. And that's what the report on AI Truth is all about, that corporate AI ethics best practice. We're looking at everything from how do you form an internal review board to look at some of the really big AI coming that you've got going, AI projects that you've got going, how to review those, how to get an external board if you want to do that as a company. What does that look like? How do you set it up in a way that it'll be really effective? And then just your internal practices and processes, which a lot of data scientists don't understand how to, you know, how they even participate in a larger picture. So I think even just understanding those and being able to, at the end of the day though, you also have to be able to put the kill switch on when something doesn't work out, and you got to do it fast. I mean, look at what Equifax had happen. The CEO didn't even know. He chalked the 160 million people had potentially been scored incorrectly. That's going to affect people's ability to get loans. That's huge. That's huge. And then they sent that. They went ahead and sent those out to the regular big banks that they always send out their feeds to, because it's part of an API feed that they set up based on their scores. And that's what data monetization is all about. But when something bad happens, you need to have that governance in place to immediately go, whoa, we're shutting this down right now until such time that we can fix this. And then we'll open up the floodgate again on the API feed into all the different applications from the banks. But that's the stuff I'm talking about. That's all in those 12 tenets of trust that I'm talking about. Governance, rectification, what do you do when something really bad happens, how to handle the incident, all that good stuff is covered.
I want to encourage everyone to follow Cortnie on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I'm a big fan now. You know, I just followed you. We connected, Cortnie. I'm so happy we reconnected after so many years.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Absolutely. And I encourage everyone to go to Amazon and get your book. So we don't know a lot. We don't know a lot still. We're here together to figure it all out.
Right.
How about that? So, Cortnie, I appreciate your time so very much today. Maybe a few takeaways for the audience to remember this conversation by, because we did talk about consumer applications, how convenient and wonderful they are, how much innovation we want, how much work that data scientists do. We appreciate that work, and yet we need to figure out, right, what's the best way to move forward. So a few points maybe, that you want to leave.
I think, look, we have to figure out better norms for pushing back and having these tough conversations when things aren't going well. And I think AI really is going to be so fantastic when we can start to use it in prescription medicine and prescription health and getting really targeted in diagnosing things we've never been able to diagnose. But we have to earn it first. And we right now, our fast and loose methods, we're moving fast and breaking people. We gotta move fast and be better. So
sounds easy. Sounds easy to do. Yes.
Yeah, we got to start looking at these 12-step. I got a 12-step program. We call it the 12 Tenets of Trust. Let's revise our wicked ways and start, doing innovation that people can really, truly trust. So that's where I will leave it, because I love AI and I think it's going to be so freaking fantastic. And I cannot wait to just dive in and start using it for some of the biggest, most challenging areas on the face of the planet. I just think if we really want to get there and we really want to use it for stuff that matters in people's lives, we have to earn their trust first. So
thank you, Cortnie. Thank you so very much for sharing your experience, your wisdom. Again, everybody, follow Cortnie on LinkedIn, on Twitter, get the book, and just let us know what you think, because I'm sure you have your own experiences. And in these videos, please let us know, please comment and share with your audiences and with your friends and colleagues. Thank you, Cortnie, so very much.
Thanks for having me, Irene.